She loves getting assurance from her partner, even when she doesn't say it out loud. Not because she is weak, not because she is insecure by nature, but because somewhere deep within her inner world, reassurance feels like oxygen, invisible when present, unbearable when absent. Many misunderstand this need. They label it as clinginess, dependency, or emotional excess. But what they fail to see is that reassurance is not about words alone. It is about safety. It is about being emotionally seen in a world that constantly asks people, especially women, to be strong, silent, and self-sufficient. This is not a flaw. This is a language of love shaped by memory, experience, and the unconscious need to feel chosen again and again. Let us understand why. Assurance is her way of feeling emotionally safe, not because she doubts love, but because love for her has never existed in silence alone. Safety is not an abstract idea inside her mind. It is something her nervous system must feel, something her heart must recognize again and again. When assurance is present, her body relaxes before her thoughts do. When it is absent, no amount of logic can convince her that everything is fine. This is because emotional safety is not built through reasoning. It is built through repetition, tone, and presence. She lives in a world where affection is often assumed but rarely affirmed. People say, "If I'm here, you should know I care," without realizing that presence without reassurance can still feel lonely. For her, love unspoken feels unfinished. It leaves space for doubt to grow, and doubt is never neutral. It fills the silence with fear. Assurance closes that gap. It tells her that she does not need to guess, perform, or prove her worth to remain chosen. This need did not appear suddenly. It was shaped quietly over years, by moments when love felt uncertain. Perhaps she once gave her heart to someone who slowly withdrew without explanation. Perhaps she learned early in life that affection was conditional, offered on good days and withdrawn on difficult ones. The mind remembers these patterns even when the memory fades. So now reassurance becomes a bridge between past uncertainty and present connection. It tells the deepest parts of her, "This time, you are safe." She may not ask for it because asking feels dangerous. Asking risks rejection. Asking risks being labeled needy, weak, or excessive. So instead she watches. She listens closely to tone. She notices effort. She feels shifts before they are spoken. When reassurance comes naturally without demand, it reaches her more deeply than any dramatic promise ever could. It tells her she was understood without having to explain herself, and that is where trust begins. Assurance is not about dependency, it is about regulation. When she feels emotionally safe, her mind becomes clearer, her heart becomes softer, and her love becomes freer. Research on emotional bonds consistently shows that humans thrive when reassurance is consistent and sincere. The brain interprets reassurance as stability, and stability allows growth. In this state, she does not cling, she expands. She becomes more confident, more expressive, more present. She gives not from fear but from fullness. Without assurance, however, something subtle begins to happen. She starts to shrink, not visibly at first. She still smiles, still listens, still cares. But inside, she begins to guard herself. Her laughter becomes quieter. Her vulnerability becomes selective. This is not punishment, it is protection. The heart knows when it is walking on uncertain ground, and it adjusts to survive. A simple sentence can change everything. Words like "I choose you," or "I'm here," or "you matter to me," may sound ordinary, but to her, they are grounding. They anchor her to the present moment. They remind her that love is not about guessing games, but about clarity. These words do not inflate her ego, they calm her spirit. They do not create dependence, they create trust. It is important to understand that she does not seek assurance because she is broken. She seeks it because she is aware. She knows how fragile connection can be when left unattended. She understands, perhaps more deeply than most, that love fades not from lack of feeling, but from lack of expression. Silence, over time, teaches the heart to prepare for loss. Assurance teaches it to stay. When she feels emotionally safe, she becomes brave in ways others may never see. She dares to love without measuring every word. She allows herself to be fully present instead of constantly scanning for signs of distance. Emotional safety frees her from survival mode. And in that freedom, she becomes not only a better partner, but a more grounded human being. Assurance does not require constant praise or dramatic declarations. It lives in consistency. It lives in showing up emotionally, not just physically. It lives in small reminders that say, "You are not alone in this." These reminders accumulate quietly, building something strong enough to hold both love and conflict without collapsing. In the end, assurance is simply the language her heart understands best. It is how she knows she is seen, chosen, and held, not just in good moments, but in the ordinary ones too. And when that language is spoken with sincerity, it does something remarkable. It turns fear into trust, hesitation into openness, and love into something that finally feels safe enough to last. She may not ask, but she is always listening. Listening not only to words, but to pauses, to shifts in tone, to the silence that lingers after something important goes unsaid. Her awareness is quiet, almost invisible, yet it is constant. While others speak to be heard, she listens to understand. And in that listening, she gathers truths people often reveal without meaning to. She learned early that asking for reassurance can feel like exposing a fragile part of the self. To ask is to risk being misunderstood, or worse, dismissed. So she adapts. She becomes observant. She pays attention to how quickly messages are returned, how eye contact is held, how presence feels when no words are exchanged. These details become her language. They tell her whether she is emotionally safe or slowly becoming invisible. This kind of listening is not paranoia. It is sensitivity shaped by experience. When someone has known inconsistency, the mind learns to read patterns for protection. A slight distance in voice, a lack of warmth where it once lived, a change in effort. These are not imagined signals to her. They are data points collected over time. The human psyche is remarkable in this way. It remembers what hurt before and tries quietly to prevent it from happening again. She may smile and say everything is fine, but inside she's measuring alignment. Do actions match promises? Does affection remain steady, or does it appear only when convenient? Psychological research shows that humans are deeply attuned to emotional congruence. When words and behavior drift apart, the nervous system notices long before the mind does. She feels that difference in her body, even if she cannot immediately explain it. Her silence is often mistaken for strength, or worse, indifference. In truth, it is restraint. She holds back her questions because she does not want to become a burden. Many people, especially women, are conditioned to believe that emotional needs make them difficult. So she learns to listen instead of speak, to adapt instead of demand. She hopes that if she listens closely enough, she will not have to ask for what she needs. And yet, listening comes at a cost. The more she listens without receiving clarity, the more she begins to doubt herself. Was that distance intentional or imagined? Did that silence mean something or nothing at all? The mind, when left without reassurance, fills the gaps with interpretation. Silence becomes a canvas on which old fears paint familiar stories. Not because she wants to suffer, but because uncertainty is harder to bear than even painful clarity. What she longs for is not constant explanation, but emotional attunement. She wants to feel that her presence is noticed, that her emotional signals are received. When reassurance arrives without her having to ask, it reaches her at a deeper level. It tells her that she was seen without having to make herself smaller or louder. It tells her that listening was not her only role, that she too is held. Studies in relational psychology suggest that unspoken needs are common in close relationships, especially among those who fear conflict or abandonment. These individuals often rely on indirect cues rather than direct requests. When those cues are met with warmth and consistency, trust grows. When they are ignored, something fragile begins to fracture. She does not break loudly. She withdraws quietly. She is always listening to how she feels after being with you. Does she feel lighter or heavier? Does she feel calm or uneasy? The body does not lie. Emotional safety leaves a sense of ease, while emotional uncertainty leaves tension. She trusts these internal signals more than words, because words can be rehearsed. Feelings cannot. When she listens and hears reassurance, through steady presence, gentle words, or consistent care, she relaxes into herself. Her guard lowers. She becomes more expressive, more open, more willing to risk vulnerability. Listening in that moment becomes a bridge rather than a shield. She no longer listens for danger, but for connection. But when listening yields only silence, distance, or mixed signals, she begins to change. Not abruptly, but gradually. She speaks less about what matters. She shares less of her inner world. This is not manipulation, it is self-preservation. The psyche instinctively pulls back from spaces where it does not feel emotionally acknowledged. She may never confront you about what she hears in the silence. She may never say, "I needed reassurance." Instead, she will adapt until adapting no longer feels possible. And when she finally detaches, it will seem sudden to those who were not listening as closely as she was. Understanding this is not about blame, it is about awareness. She listens because she cares. She listens because connection matters deeply to her. And when her listening is met with presence, clarity, and emotional consistency, something powerful happens. She no longer has to listen for signs of loss. She can finally listen for the sound of trust settling into place. Her need for assurance is rooted in past experience, not in weakness, not in a lack of self-worth, but in memory. Memory that lives not only in the mind, but in the body and the heart. Long before she understood the language of relationships, she learned something quietly and deeply. Love is not always stable. Sometimes it arrives warmly and leaves without explanation. Sometimes it is present one day and distant the next. And the psyche, especially a sensitive one, never forgets these patterns. Past experiences shape expectations long after the events themselves fade. A person may move on consciously, may say they have healed, but the inner world keeps its own record. Emotional experiences, particularly early ones, become templates. If affection once felt conditional, reassurance now becomes essential. Not because she doubts herself, but because uncertainty once cost her safety. The mind adapts to survive. It learns to seek confirmation where there was once confusion. Perhaps she loved someone who promised permanence but practiced absence. Perhaps she invested deeply, only to be met with emotional withdrawal. These moments do not always end dramatically. Often they end quietly, leaving behind unanswered questions. And unanswered questions are powerful. They linger. They teach the heart to be cautious, to look for signs, to crave clarity. Assurance becomes the answer to questions that were never given the dignity of closure. Research in psychology supports this understanding. Studies on attachment patterns show that inconsistent emotional availability in earlier relationships, whether romantic or familial, can lead individuals to seek reassurance later in life. This is not pathology, it is adaptation. The nervous system learns what it must do to feel safe again. For her, reassurance soothes an inner alarm that once had reason to sound. She may appear confident, capable, even independent. Many who carry this need have learned to function exceptionally well on the surface. But beneath that competence is a quieter truth. Emotional safety allows her to rest. Without it, she remains alert, always prepared for loss. Assurance tells her she can lower her guard, that this moment does not require defense. The past also teaches silence. If she once expressed her needs and was met with dismissal or ridicule, she learned that asking comes with risk. So she stops asking. Instead, she hopes reassurance will come voluntarily, as proof that she is valued without having to plead. When it does, it heals more than the present moment. It reaches backward, touching old wounds that never fully closed. She is not reliving the past, she is responding to it. Each time reassurance is withheld, it echoes earlier absences. Each time it is offered sincerely, it rewrites history just a little. This is how healing happens, not in dramatic breakthroughs, but in consistent, gentle experiences that contradict old fears. Many misunderstand this need and believe it means she does not trust. In truth, she trusts deeply. She trusts enough to care about the outcome. Indifference does not seek reassurance, only someone who values connection does. Her heart remembers what it felt like to lose something meaningful without warning, and it wants to prevent that pain from returning. Assurance does not erase the past, but it softens its influence. It tells her nervous system that this relationship operates by different rules, that presence will not disappear without explanation, that affection does not have to be earned repeatedly. Over time, consistent reassurance reshapes her inner expectations. The past loses its grip not because it is forgotten, but because it is no longer being confirmed. There is also a quiet dignity in her need. She does not ask for perfection. She does not demand constant attention. She seeks clarity, steadiness, and emotional honesty. These are not excessive desires. They are human ones. The heart thrives when it knows where it stands. Ambiguity may seem harmless, but to someone shaped by uncertainty, it feels like standing on unstable ground. When she receives reassurance, she becomes more present, more open, more willing to invest. Her energy shifts from self-protection to connection. She gives more freely because she is no longer guarding against loss. This is why reassurance strengthens relationships rather than weakening them. It creates a foundation where vulnerability can exist without fear. Her past does not define her future, but it informs her needs. To understand her need for assurance is to understand that love does not exist in isolation from memory. Every relationship carries the echoes of those that came before. And when reassurance is given with consistency and sincerity, it does something profound. It teaches the heart that the story can end differently this time. Assurance makes her stronger, not dependent, because strength is not born from emotional starvation. True strength emerges when the inner world feels stable enough to grow. When she receives assurance, something fundamental inside her settles. The mind no longer wastes energy scanning for danger, and the heart no longer braces for abandonment. In that calm, she becomes more capable, not less. There is a common misunderstanding that needing reassurance is a sign of fragility. This belief comes from a culture that equates emotional silence with independence. But silence is not always strength. Often, it is endurance. And endurance, when prolonged, hardens the soul instead of empowering it. Assurance softens that hardness, allowing her to engage with life from a place of trust rather than survival. When she feels reassured, she is not leaning on another person to hold her up. She is standing on emotional ground that feels solid. From that ground, she can take risks, express herself, and invest in the world without fear of sudden collapse. Psychological studies consistently show that emotional security increases confidence and resilience. A secure individual is more willing to explore, to create, and to connect. This is not dependence. This is empowerment. Consider how the human nervous system works. When it perceives threat or uncertainty, it shifts into defense. The body tightens, the mind becomes hypervigilant, and energy is diverted towards self-protection. When reassurance is present, the nervous system receives a different message: you are safe. In this state, the body relaxes, the mind clears, and creativity returns. She does not become smaller, she becomes expansive. Her strength is most visible when she feels chosen. In that safety, she speaks more honestly, she sets healthier boundaries. She no longer tolerates what hurts simply to avoid loss. Assurance gives her the courage to be authentic, because she is no longer operating from fear. Paradoxically, it is when she feels secure that she is least likely to cling. Security eliminates the need to grasp. There is evidence to support this. Research on emotionally secure relationships shows that individuals who receive consistent reassurance are more self-reliant, not less. They trust themselves because they trust the environment they are in. They do not confuse love with anxiety. Their decisions are guided by values rather than fear of abandonment. Assurance creates internal stability, and internal stability is the foundation of strength. Without reassurance, she may still appear strong. She may manage responsibilities, support others, and keep moving forward. But this strength is often built on tension. It is strength that comes from bracing, not from balance. Over time, this kind of strength becomes exhausting. It demands constant vigilance. Assurance relieves that burden. It allows her to rest without losing herself. Some fear that reassurance will make her expect more or become emotionally demanding. In reality, the opposite is true. When she feels secure, her needs become clearer and calmer. She communicates more directly. She no longer tests or waits in silence. She does not seek validation in unhealthy ways. Assurance replaces anxious behaviors with grounded presence. She does not need reassurance to survive. She has survived without it before. What assurance gives her is the freedom to live fully. It allows her to invest emotionally without holding part of herself back. It tells her that she does not need to earn love through overgiving or self-erasure. She can be. There is a quiet transformation that happens when assurance is consistent. Her posture changes, her voice steadies, her emotions become less reactive and more reflective. She becomes better at handling conflict because she is not afraid that disagreement will lead to abandonment. Assurance strengthens her ability to face difficulty without collapsing. True dependence arises not from reassurance but from deprivation. When emotional needs are ignored, people often cling harder, hoping to extract certainty from scarcity. Assurance prevents this cycle. It meets the need before it turns into desperation. It builds a relationship where both individuals can stand firmly, side by side, rather than leaning out of fear. In the end, assurance does not weaken her. It reminds her of her worth. It reinforces her inner stability. It gives her the courage to grow, to love deeply, and to walk away from what no longer serves her. That is not dependence. That is strength rooted in security, and security is the soil in which the strongest selves are formed. A few words can heal what silence destroys, because silence is never empty. Silence speaks in echoes, in interpretations, in memories that rush to fill the space left behind. When nothing is said, the mind does not remain still. It searches. It revisits old wounds. It remembers every moment when love faded without explanation. Words, when spoken with sincerity, interrupt that cycle. They ground the heart in the present and remind it that it is not alone in its fears. Silence is often misunderstood as neutrality or calm, but emotionally it is rarely either. Silence can feel like abandonment wearing the mask of patience. For someone who has known emotional distance, silence is not rest. It is a question without an answer. It asks, am I still important? And when no reply comes, the question grows heavier with time. A few simple words can lift that weight more effectively than grand gestures ever could. Human beings are wired for connection through language. Long before complex thought develops, we learn safety through sound, tone, and response. A soothing voice, a gentle affirmation, a familiar phrase. These signals tell the nervous system that danger has passed. When these signals are absent, the body remains alert. No amount of logic can override this response. This is why reassurance spoken aloud can calm what silence silently inflames. Many believe that love should be understood without being spoken. This belief places an unfair burden on the heart. Understanding cannot thrive in a vacuum. Even the strongest bond weakens when clarity is withheld. Words do not cheapen love, they give it form. They transform feeling into shared reality. When love remains unspoken, it becomes private, and private love is fragile. There are moments when silence feels safer than speech. People stay quiet to avoid conflict, to avoid vulnerability, or to avoid saying the wrong thing. But silence often says more than intended. It can communicate indifference where none exists, distance where closeness was meant. The listener does not hear intention, they hear absence, and absence is interpreted through the lens of past pain. A few words, honest, present, unguarded, can rewrite that interpretation. They can stop the mind from spiraling into old narratives. They can remind the heart that this moment is different from the ones that hurt before. Words like, I'm here, I care, or you matter to me, are not dramatic, but they are powerful. They speak directly to the parts of us that learn to fear being forgotten. Research in emotional psychology shows that verbal affirmation strengthens trust and emotional regulation. When people receive clear expressions of care, their stress responses decrease, and their capacity for empathy increases. This is not sentimentality, it is biology. The human nervous system responds to reassurance as a signal of safety. Silence, by contrast, keeps the system in a state of uncertainty. There is also courage in speaking. To offer reassurance is to risk being seen. It requires presence, not perfection. Many hold back words because they fear they will not be enough. But imperfect reassurance is still reassurance. It is the act of reaching out that heals, not the eloquence of the message. Silence avoids risk, but it also avoids connection. Over time, silence erodes what it does not nourish. Relationships do not usually end because of a lack of love. They end because love was left unexpressed. Feelings that are not voiced begin to feel unreal, even to the one who holds them. Words give love continuity. They renew it in the present moment, reminding both speaker and listener that connection is still alive. A few words can also restore dignity. They tell someone they do not have to guess where they stand. They do not have to earn reassurance through performance or patience. They are allowed to rest in knowing. This kind of clarity is deeply human. It honors the emotional reality of the other, without demanding silence as proof of strength. Silence may seem easier, but it is rarely kinder. Words, when spoken with care, can heal misunderstandings before they harden into distance. They can turn fear into relief, tension into trust. They can soften a heart that has been holding itself together for too long. In the quiet spaces between people, words act as bridges. They cross the distance that silence creates, and sometimes, all it takes to save something meaningful is the willingness to speak, to offer a few honest words that remind another heart that it is still seen, still valued, and still safe to stay. She loves getting assurance, even when she doesn't ask for it. because reassurance is how her heart rests. It is how she knows she is safe to love fully, without armor. And the truth is simple. If you love someone who needs reassurance, don't see it as a burden. See it as an invitation to be the place where their heart finally feels at home, because love that is expressed is love that lasts.